All right, so Councillor Dudas and Sean, I'm not sure if we're ready to get going here. Oh, we'll wait for Robin there.
I'm all
Give it
set. I
another-
see it's
another
7
minute.
o'clock though, so maybe we might want to give maybe one more minute and see if anyone else wishes to join. So why don't we give it one more minute? Okay,
Okay,
well,
sorry about
I
that.
think we're good.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dudas. Sorry about that. My sound was a little hiccupy there. So welcome this evening to Blackburn Hamlet. Let me just share my screen here. Apologies. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if we'd just like to welcome the Blackburn Community Association. I see we have Lynn here. If you'd like to open with your remarks.
Excellent, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynn Lefebvre. I am the secretary for the Blackburn Community Association. And on behalf of the Blackburn Community Association, I would like to thank you for joining this information session, and hopefully we'll all learn a lot. I would also like to thank Councillor Duras's office for organizing this, and the generosity of the City of Ottawa staff who are on this call tonight. Really appreciate your providing us some input in, or some understanding of this process, and what role we and the residents of the hamlet can play as we see an increasing number of infill developments over the coming years. Just for those who aren't aware, Blackburn Community Association is quite active in our community, and we're always looking for feedback on development and improvements to the hamlet. So feel free to visit our website at blackburnhamlet.ca for more information, and let us know if you have any suggestions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lynn. Next, Councillor Dudas, if you'd like to make your remarks.
Wonderful. Bonsoir à tous. Merci pour votre participation ce soir. I want to thank everybody who's attending this evening. I did want to let everyone know that we are recording these opening portion and presentation to be able to share it with the community after the fact. And I know that the BCA, the Blackburn Community Association, has been a wonderful partner in not only agreeing to host tonight's meeting, we'll be also sharing the video afterwards. That way, even if people have missed this important meeting, they'll be able to see some of the information. As many of you know, Blackburn Hamlet is a phenomenal place to live. It's a wonderful community. There are a number of very old properties, and there's some new properties. We're a wonderful mix of types of housing, and we have phenomenal commercial opportunities. We also know that we are well served by transit, and we're going to even see improvements with the extension of Stage 2 LRT with the construction of Montreal Station. All of these things mean that more and more people want to move to Blackburn Hamlet. We want to see our children grow up and find housing in our community. And we want to find that our seniors who wish to stay in the community also have places to live. Development and developers have also eyed our community and know that these are our opportunities, that there are pieces of property that either are available now or going to be available in the near future. And as some of you may be aware, that means that there are applications either in the process of being filed by development organizations, corporations, and businesses that will change some of how we see our community and will allow for new people to move in. What tonight's about is to really answer some of those questions about how the city planning process takes place, what my role as councillor is in terms of what I can and cannot do, what the community association's role is and the the ability they have to represent the community, and what individual residents have the ability to do and influence and say as we go through public consultation process. It also gives a bit of a sneak peek too into the planning process from the provincial perspective. The city's ability to develop is really run and overseen by the provincial government. So there is only so much leeway throughout the process for all of us, whether it's the councillor or city staff even, and the community, to have a say in how developments unfold. But I thought it was absolutely important, and I do thank once again the Community Association for partnering tonight, to have an open conversation about what that means for Blackburn Hamlet, in particular to some of the unique zoning that we see in our community. So I wanted to thank everybody for coming. I wanted to certainly open the floor to conversation and questions after the fact, but now I'm going to turn it over to Amy to continue with the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Dudas. So first, I'd like to make a land recognition statement. Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Today, Ottawa is home to approximately 40,000 First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. La communauté autochtone d'Ottawa est diverse et représente de nombreuses nations, langues et coutumes. La ville rend hommage au territoire des premiers peuples ainsi qu'à l'ensemble des membres des Premières Nations et Inuits et des Métis d'Ottawa, de même qu'à leurs précieuses contributions passées et présentes à ce territoire. So the agenda for this evening, and excuse me for the plane overhead of me, we had our opening remarks by Blackburn Community Association and Councillor Dudas. Thank you for those. So next we will go, Robin Vandeland, Planner 3 with City of Ottawa, will review the planning policy. Lucy Ramirez, Planner 2 with the City of Ottawa, my apologies. She will review the zoning and the development review process here at the City of Ottawa for development applications. And then I'll just go over some resources and how to stay updated on these applications coming in. We'll then go over the role of the councillor, and then we'll have our closing remarks, and then we will go into the question and answer period. So Robin, you can take it away.
Thanks, Amy. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am a former resident of Blackburn Hamlet. I used to live on Woodview back in the day. I know the area very well, and my children went to school at Good Shepherd, and so I in fact very much like Blackburn Hamlet. So it's a pleasure to speak with you. I'll talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about my role, what I do here at the city. Not everybody understands necessarily what urban planners do, and I actually have quite an interesting job. So my job is to manage on behalf of the city land use. So I am in charge of a unit here called the Official Plan Unit. I'm also temporarily in charge of another group called the Community Planning Unit. So the Official Plan Unit, we take care of the official plan, and the Community Planning Unit, we prepare secondary plans. It's a very interesting job in the sense that my background is in science, but I did an urban planning degree, so I was quite interested in the interface and the interrelationships between people and housing and neighborhoods, and it's actually a really great career to be in. If you've got any kids, this is a good one. So the picture that I've got up here right now is it's not of Ottawa, it's of this is of Greenwich Village. I show this picture to people because this is the inspiration for a lot of modern planning that we have now. It was a neighborhood inhabited by a very significant woman named Jane Jacobs. Jane wrote The Life and Death of American Cities in the 1960s, and it began the dialogue on how we were going to sort of look at how the inner cities had died and how suburbs had sort of taken over, but they were lifeless places. She started a dialogue, and she was a journalist. She was not an urban planner or a technical person at all, but she was able to change people's thinking across North America and the world on what good neighborhoods are. And so that's why I've shown it to you now. It's an aspirational picture. We don't have anything like this here, but I think it represents a good cross section of the kinds of neighborhoods that people like to visit and would desire to live in. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, Amy. So in Ontario, we are somewhat different in Canada than our American neighbors in the sense that the land use permissions and the rights and land rights are very different than they are south of the border. South of the border, it's a bit more of a free-for-all, and there are entrenched rights for land and land use, and it is it's much more difficult for my colleagues to the south to be able to exercise control. Here in Ontario and in Canada, land use is regulated at the provincial level, and the province sets out the rules for what land use planning is going to be. The rules in Ontario are articulated in the Planning Act, and they establish the ground rules for land use planning, describes what we may do and who's in a position to control them and make decisions. They also establish provincial interests, and they're quite clear about it. And the rules are really, really strict. You don't mind going to the next slide, Amy? So the provincial policy statement, or the PPS, as we often refer to it, is sort of a motherhood document that accompanies the Provincial Planning Act. It's not a full regulation under the Act, but it has similar power. And under that, the rules that are established in the provincial policy statement, municipalities must be consistent with. So when it says a municipality must have 15 years of housing supply pre-approved, then yes, we must have it. And we cannot be in default. And it's interesting in that the cities and municipalities are creatures of the province. And what that means is that if the city does not follow provincial planning rules, the province can intervene and can intervene actively. I'm aware of two separate occasions in my career where it's happened. One, the County of Grey had all of their planning permissions revoked by the minister because they were not obeying planning laws. And then the second occasion, it was a ministerial zoning order, which is like a minister's veto saying, whatever you do, this is what's going to happen on these lands. So they're quite powerful things. So cities and councils have a lot of say, but not full say in everything that happens. The province is quite powerful. Just to close off on the provincial policy statement, it does cover some key areas of provincial interest. The first is they talk about strong communities. So they're really obviously interested in employment and housing and public spaces, and there are specific rules associated with those. We also have specific rules relating to natural resources, minerals, and aggregates. Aggregates are important because the city does not get a lot of say in them. And in Blackburn-Hamlet, that is it has historically been a thorny issue because of the Lafarge quarry on Bear Brook and those blasts that happen. There is essentially nothing we can do at the city relating to the intrusion of noise and vibration on that. It's fully provincial, and we can't even change the entrance to their quarry. It's not a lot that we have there. And then we also talk about things like public health and safety, which are critical to what we do here at the city. So anyway, I don't want to talk too much more about the provincial policy statement. If there are any more questions, I can talk to you about how it is interpreted and also what more it has in it. If you don't mind moving on, Amy. So the official plan, and we have a new one, which is not quite approved by the province yet, is a blueprint of values, ideas, aspirations, and rules. So there are certain base rules that we must have articulated in the Planning Act and the Provincial Policy Statement and in some other regulations. But for the most part, the city gets to sort of decide how it would like to grow over time. The details of how that are largely in our purview. So we do that through the official plan. Now, there are also things called secondary plans. And a secondary plan is like an appendix to the official plan. It is technically part of the official plan. It is approved by the ministry as well when a new official plan comes forward. And it has the full force and effect of the parent official plan. Official plans and secondary plans are implemented through the zoning bylaw, and my colleague Lucy is going to talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, the zoning bylaw is very simply a set of rules on a table, maps on a table that details every parcel of land in the city and the rules that are associated with it. And so and the official plan determines what the zoning bylaw is going to look like. Next. So bear with me because these slides are kind of flashy, but they're still, I'm still working out how they work. So there are 3 types of applications that we receive under the Planning Act generally, and 3 themes: land use changes, a lot creation, and lot development. So land use really it's like what you're allowed to do on what spot of land. That's articulated in the official plan and the zoning bylaw. The next, lot creation is done in only 2 ways. It's either through subdivision or consents. There's another thing called part lot control, which I don't want to get into, but it can happen as well. And it's much like a consent. And then lot development, and that's where the city exercises its control on how something is going to be developed on a site. And Lucy's going to talk a little bit more about that. I can just elaborate a little bit. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So certain decisions are made by different people. Land use decisions are made by planning committee first, and then it goes to the city council. And at that point, it can go either out for an appeal or whatever afterwards. So those are the key decisions that are made by council. Next, please. So the lot creation and the lot development applications, those are delegated approvals. What that means is that the province or the council has given the approval, the overall approval to these subdivision applications and site plan applications at a staff level, and that means the general manager of planning. Next, please. And then lot creation, like consents or small changes in the rules of developing a parcel, like a minor variance, those are approved by a committee of adjustment. And that's a group of people that are appointed by council at the beginning of the term of council to make decisions on those minor planning matters. And next. So the last thing I wanted to say is that the appeals, so if people don't agree with the decisions that have made, or the developer has not agreed, they've been turned down, you have every right to appeal the land use decision or the creation or development decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. It's a quasi-judicial tribunal where evidence is given, much like a court of law, and there are lawyers and professionals involved in giving things. It can be a very time-consuming and very expensive process, and we do almost everything we can to try to avoid it. Next. Oh, and we're up. Lucy's up. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Lucy?
Hi, thank you very much for having me at this meeting, Councillor Dudas. So I guess I want to start by saying the reason that I have this slide up is that back in 2014, there was a zoning review that took place to implement the official plan amendment that happened that council approved in 2013. And so this area is the area that was studied. And so Innes Road, it's a major collector road. It's designated arterial main street on Schedule B of the existing official plan, and the new official plan designates it as a corridor, and that's both a main street corridor and a minor corridor. There are properties along Innes Road that are zoned arterial main street with subzones such as subzone 10, subzone 11, and there are some urban exceptions that are also applicable to that zoning. And it generally applies to the properties that front onto Innes Road, but the designation can be extended onto side streets that form part of that corridor. And the AM designation identifies it identifies streets that offer opportunities for intensification for medium density and mixed use development. So this is where you're going to see along Innis Street and those properties that are zoned arterial Main Street, you're going to see the permissions that permit the most density in these areas. So buildings up to 9 stories can be permitted in some areas. And there are provisions within the zoning that take into account properties that abut the rear lot line that are zoned residential. So there are step backs that are required and that are written in to the zoning when it's applicable, when it abuts a rear lot line that is zoned residential. Next slide. So this gives you a little bit more of a breakdown of different zones, and there are lots of zones that are permitted within the Blackburn Hamlet, and they are a reflection of what the land use designations are in the official plan. So you have various residential zones, you have those arterial Main Street zones. You also have community leisure facility zones and development reserve, environmental protection, local commercial, minor institutional, park and open space. And these different zones permit different uses, and there are they also regulate the type of development that can occur on these pieces of land. And it's designed to be compatible with what's there, but also to have an eye to the future of what the planned function should be. So next slide, Amy.
Okay,
So
sorry, just a note, we do have a hand raised, but we will wait till the end to the question and answer period. So just hold your questions. Thank you.
Okay, so I chose to, well, these are a couple of the development applications that we do see, so site plan control and zoning bylaw amendments. And this is kind of gives you an overview of what is involved when we get applications that are to develop a site or to amend the zoning bylaw to permit different uses, different standards. I will note that even prior to getting an application, we have pre-application consultation meetings, and we identify policies that are applicable as well as studies that need to be submitted with the application. Once we've deemed an application complete, we put it on circulation, and for site plan control, there are 2 different types. There's a complex, which has a public consultation element to it, and a standard. The standard ones go up on our dev apps, but the complex ones, there are signs that go up on the property. There are also circulation mailing, essentially a mail out that happens as well. For standard site plan applications, the commenting period is 3 weeks, and we circulate it to technical agencies as well as other departments within the city. With complex application, it's a month, it's 4 weeks. Through that, we get different comments and feedback and issues. I guess there's identification of issues, and those can be done by infrastructure management, can identify issues that need to be resolved, transportation, urban design, some of the technical agencies, the utilities, as well as the public. They can raise issues, and we bring them to the applicant and we try to resolve the issues that are raised. After we've gone through that process, sometimes there are other submissions that come after, and then for site plan control, the decision-making is delegated to staff. We send a delegated authority report off to our managers. There is also an appeal period once the decision has been made. For zoning bylaw amendments, there is a difference in that there's a staff recommendation that goes to planning committee, and that is the public meeting that members of the public can attend and give presentations regarding the proposal. Councillors can also request a public meeting information session in advance of during the public and technical reviews. If there's lots of questions that people have, we can hold a community information session. But the official public meeting would be that planning committee meeting. The staff recommendation goes to that committee meeting, and then committee makes a recommendation to city council regarding those applications. So those are the two kind of applications I wanted to focus in on. I will turn it over to Amy.
Great, thank you, Lucy. So next, I will just briefly go over where you can get this information on development, planning policy and development applications. So there is the official plan on Engage Ottawa. There's the ottawa.ca page for development and engagement. There's the planning primer that you can take part in. It's offered twice a year, and it does have its own webpage as well. The development application search tool, it'll list all the development applications that are currently active or pending. The ottawa.ca public engagement search. So you can search any kind of engagement. It should be listed up on the ottawa.ca page. Like I said, Engage Ottawa, some projects have their own page, as well as Geo Ottawa and exploring all the layers and the different parcels of land. And how to stay updated on the development applications. So there is a public notification list, as you are probably aware as a community association. There's a heads up that goes around. Like Lucy mentioned, there is sometimes a site sign, the public circulation mail out, the City Builders e-newsletter. So that is our departmental newsletter, and it gives updates on all the projects going on around the city. As well as your councillor e-newsletter as well, and newspaper advertisements. You may see the bigger projects in the newspaper. Next, we'll just briefly go over the role of the councillor. So the councillor receives the application in the public circulation. That's the first notification. And of course, the councillor will express feedback on behalf of their community to the file lead during the comment review period. Like Lucy mentioned, the councillor can request a community information and comment session for any application that's controversial that doesn't require a public meeting. And like mentioned above, provides his or her comments to the file lead. The councillor does not direct staff's finding to support or reject the application. The city itself does not build the homes, rather private landowners will either work with developers or develop the properties themselves. Within the Planning Act, there are no legal tools for any local councillor to prevent a development application from proceeding. And traditionally, a city councillor could pull the delegated authority from staff and require an application that would normally be staff approved to go to planning committee. However, under the new provincial housing bill, that will no longer be an option. Any development applications that do not require a change in zoning bylaw, staff will be able to approve or deny these plans without committee or council's approval. So now we will close the session with comments from Councillor Dudas, and then we will go into our question session.
Thank you very much, Amy. What we intend to do now is we're going to stop the recording so that portion of this meeting and the presentation can be shared with the wider community.